actually has to do with business. Every business in the world, Matt, you're in. Welcome, brother. Every business in the world, now to give you context, if you guys had got the link in your digital ticket, obviously you will have been coming to this event, and at the same time, you should have had a digital copy of this. If you printed one off or you're staring at it digitally, I'm going to advocate that you have a notepad and a pen or a printed version of this to work with as we're going through it. Now, this is the 4-block business matrix. I've worked with just over 300 businesses now, and I've had this tested against what will now be just about 800 businesses, whether enterprise class, governance, or solopreneurs. Every one of those businesses would fit on this page. This page breaks down businesses into 4 areas or 4 quadrants, and they're actually quite simple. If you can see my mouse icon here, you're going to see me in the top left corner circling around the money quadrant for business. In the top right, we have the time quadrant for a business. In the bottom left, we have the architecture component or quadrant of a business, and we have the leadership quadrant. Now, my normal language is actually cornerstone. So we have the money cornerstone, time cornerstone, architecture cornerstone, and leadership. Money is a product of money in and money out, or the financial component, financial structure for a business. The time cornerstone of a business has to do with the way we divide time in, on, and for our business, how we manage time when it comes to time in, lights on, doors open, time on our business, plan, direct, grow, time for our business, bookends, or those limitations or the actual structure we put into time. The smaller the business, the greater the need to allow the business eat as much time as possible, which means now for small business owners, solopreneurs, etc., time for your business becomes really important because time is such a premium. Larger the business, the more we tend to segment or separate our time. And that's where we start to get into role definition, which means that we have salespeople and accounting people and human resources people and operations, management side, etc. So people's actual roles and the way time is spent in a business starts to become more separated, more segmented, more specific. The architecture or the things and stuff that make business run includes human capital, human resources, business development, marketing, operations planning, and then the actual technical development or the team and management development for people inside the business. And last but certainly not least is the leadership or the measurement component for the business, where we look at assessing talents or the things that people are good at when they wake up in the morning. The leadership development, in other words, developing those people and developing the talents of senior leaders and business owners so that they get better at the job of taking businesses through challenging times, much like we're facing now. The strategic plan, not the document that necessarily outlines every aspect or part of a business, but being able to look at businesses from a dashboard perspective. In other words, where are we compared to where we're going and what we're building? And then, of course, brand development and brand channel extensions. So these 4 components, quadrants, or cornerstones, the money, the time, the architecture, and the leadership, build 4 cornerstones for the whole building of the business itself, if you allow me to say. And then in each one of these quadrants, there are the different components. So in the money, we have short-term budgeting, long-term financial planning, cash flow projections, profit and loss or the P&L tool, the accounting and bookkeeping cycle, understanding KPIs, key performance indicators, the financial dashboard of the business. Now, for the money component, quadrant, or cornerstone of a business to make sense and to work very well, you must have these 5 pieces to function and function very well. Regardless of size or scale of business, first of all, you have to have some sense of short-term budgeting. What is happening through the next 30, 60, 90 days for your business? Long-term financial plan. What has happened previously if you have history for the business financially? And what is going to happen over the next 12 months? What are my expectations? What are going to be the ebbs and flows? What are going to be my busier periods, my quieter periods? And what expectations and planning can I do around the finances of the business when it comes to the next 12 months for my business? The cash flow or the cash flow projections. What is going on with the actual money? And are we managing, mitigating, and measuring what's happening with the physical cash in our business? One of the best examples of how important cash flow is to businesses and why it is so very important. While we look at budgeting and while we look at financial planning, cash flow projections being important, this is told to us through not the story, but the factual data that says that once upon a time, Apple was preserving such high cash reserves, holding on to such immensely large amount of money at any given time when operating, that they could buy their next 6 largest competitors in cash. They continued to preserve cash as capital, as part of the balance sheet. In other words, the financial document that showed off the entire, let's say, world atlas, if you will, of the structure of the business. And cash being one of their biggest components and biggest aspects, they were looking to preserve at any given time, all day, every day, to the tune where they could buy their next 6 biggest competitors, including Samsung. That was back in 2011. And straight up until 2014, they were still one of the most cash flush major corporations in the world. So if Apple can prove that cash is far more important to hold on to than its ability to leverage or even satisfying by going back and paying extensive dividends to their shareholders, there is not much else that we can do to talk about it. So cash flow is the act of measuring and holding on, preserving our actual cash inside the business. Then we have the P&L tool, the accounting and bookkeeping cycle, how we actually manage and measure our financials to be able to look at the health and the process that we take. So QuickBooks, Xero, etc., what we do on a weekly and a monthly basis to account for the financial structure of the business, the financial reporting, and then on a yearly basis being able to take us into the taxable position, etc. Last, inside of money, is understanding KPIs or key performance indicators. That's just the fancy words for the dashboard, the entire financial dashboard of the business, for us to look at businesses at one snapshot to understand all of its financial component, the health of the business, and then to be able to make informed decisions about what's happening inside the business. So this money quadrant for the business itself is comprised of these 5 parts. Each of these can become more complex or more divided, subdivided, or become more labor intensive depending on size and scope of the business. But when you distill a business or break it down to its most common or core components, inside of the money component, large or small businesses, we always have to have a budget of some kind. We have to have long-term financials. We have to be able to test and measure what's going on with the physical money that's happening inside of our business. We have to have the accounting and bookkeeping side of our business working. And then, of course, we have to have a dashboard to show us the financial health. So moving from the money quadrant, the money component of the business, we come over to time. Now, time management is a bit of a misnomer. This isn't a time management system, let's say, like you would download, sign up for, get a complicated day plan or whatever it is. Time management is about organizing our time in our business, on our business, and for our business. Time in our business, lights are on, doors open. I show up, I unlock the front door, I flip over the open sign, I open up the register, I turn the lights on, I start to service or transact with my clients or customers. Time on my business is that amount of time that I spend planning, directing, growing my business. And then time for my business is what we might call bookends. I will typically say that my business runs from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And then I have other times during the week where I have more time dedicated towards or for my business, meaning that everything I do in my business, whether I'm working in my business, working with clients, directing traffic, helping them to build better businesses, or whether I'm taking an opportunity to plan, direct, and grow my business, in other words, working on it, I must accomplish inside of that 7 in the morning till 7 at night. The smaller the business, the less structure we tend to put around our time. And we tend to let the business, let's call it a monster at this point for a moment, we allow to eat as much of our business time as we want. I've just always got more things to do, more stuff to focus on. If I don't get my invoicing done, if I don't talk and follow up on this appointment, if I don't talk to this vendor or supplier, if I don't take care of this disgruntled client, who will do it? And so I will start very, very early in the morning and go very, very late at night, and I will continue to wash, rinse, and repeat. And then my business has now started to eat every available moment. And then for those people in the room, Ashley and Justin, for example, we talk about human capital, human performance. We start to degrade our ability to perform. So it pays to have a sense of control over the amount of time we're willing to dedicate for our business. And from there, we're really only dividing it in 2 ways. It's either doing stuff inside of our business, clients, customers, service, work, operations, etc., or on our business. Plan, direct, grow, test, measure. So the money and time components are at the top half of the page. What is the profit center of the business? The money being the fiscal, financial, and cash flow perspective. Time being the largest depreciating asset we have in business. We have 86,400 seconds on any given day. We can either beg, borrow, steal, leverage, or else take them from any other place and put them in. So our profit center of our business is the money and time, the top half of the sheet, and we either have it or we don't. And how do we preserve it, leverage it, or make it to work the absolute best that we can? The bottom half of the page is the people and process side of the page, the architecture, the things and stuff, or the actual components and structure of our business. Human capital, HR, care and feeding of the animals. Business development, the sales cycle for our business. Marketing program, getting our business to talk about itself when, well, we're not in the room. Operations planning. Now, for a lot of people and a lot of businesses, and you know, Ashley and Justin, you can certainly attest to this as well. And Matt, you've seen it in other organizations in the past, Ben as well. Stacy, I haven't had, unfortunately, an opportunity to get to know you very well. So you know, I imagine your background includes certain things as well. But the larger the business, the more steps would be involved in an operations plan. Typically, I work with small to medium enterprise business owners, and one of the first ways I'll explain operations planning to them is say, flip to a blank sheet of paper and write phone call, email in the top corner, and write getting paid in the bottom corner, and start to write out every step that will happen between the time somebody calls you, emails you, or reaches out and says, I want what you've got, to when you're getting paid from that client or customer. Operations planning is understanding all the mechanical steps that would happen inside of a business in the order that they happen in, so that I can look at the business from start to finish and then begin to educate other people as I add employees, as my business starts to grow, increases in complexity. And then from an operations planning standpoint, I can look at three parts of a business: people, process, and tools. People, in other words, the individuals that will start to do these different steps inside my operations plan. Or inside my operations plan, I can start to define what individual parts of the operations create common goals, which become jobs. And then we have the process, the way things are done inside of my business. And lastly, tools, the things that we use to do these different things. Then, of course, inside of the architecture component or quadrant, we have the team or management development. And that is building the technical skills of those people that do individual jobs inside of our operations plan. So human capital, HR, is to take care of those people, whether it's one person, solopreneur. In other words, if you are a solo worker, it pays to care for the only employee or the golden goose that you have. Or as businesses grow in complexity and the human capital, in other words, the need for more people to do jobs, it pays for us to be able to care for our employees and figure out what to do when we need to find them, hire them, onboard them, have them work operational within our business, and then ultimately when we say goodbye. Our business needs a way to do this, and inside of the architecture quadrant component or cornerstone for the business, having an HR program and understanding what the obligations are when it comes to the people that we have in our business is desperately important. Business development is the sales cycle. Sales is the art of me talking to you, or about my business talking to you directly about what we do and looking to transact. A typical analogy or comparison for sales is anything that I do now that is going to have an effect to increase my operating revenue in the next 30 days is sales or business development. Anything for the next step down that I do that's going to be 30 days plus that will allow my business to ultimately attract more attention, educate people on what it is that we do, products, services, offerings that we have, and then look to start to attract people over a given period of time is where marketing or our advertising program comes in. So sales is when we talk outwardly, directly. Marketing is how we attract attention to our business the rest of the time when we're not open or functioning inside of sales. Then, of course, operations plan, as I've explained before. So for the architecture quadrant or component, these 5 parts cover the fundamental pieces or building blocks that needs to go into the actual architecture or structure of the business itself. Last but not least, we come into the leadership component, where we want to understand talent, the things that people that are good at when they wake up first thing in the morning. It is one thing under operations planning or team and management development, if I can go back to architecture for a moment, to know that Mitch has a technical background in financial structure. Mitch has a technical background in human capital. Mitch has a technical background in training and sales. Mitch has a technical background in marketing. Mitch has technical training and development and working with people from a management capacity. Talent is understanding those things about ourselves or other people that we bring in towards our business. Mitch is really good at anticipating needs. Mitch is really good at solving problems. Mitch is really good at convincing people to do things that he wants. Mitch has a really high self-start. In other words, his ability to figure out what he needs to do and get going by himself is there. Mitch has a highly developed sense of resilience. In other words, Mitch can get kicked or beaten up and bounce back up and continue to operate without having to take a great deal of time. So understanding what people are good at when they wake up in the morning, as well as this team and management development, what we can build as a technical skill for them, allows us to put people to their best use, their higher order of use. If you're in a technical capacity, and I'm going to use the example of, let's say, an engineering company or a software company. Well, engineers, technicians, or architects, for example, have developed a great deal of technical information about the products, services, offerings, or systems that they use or what they may be building. Yet an engineer, an architect, etc., might have a predilection and have a really high social driver, might be really good with people, might really enjoy interaction working with people, which means technical skill says that he can answer many of the questions, processes, or actually do the work that would be involved with an engineering software company, etc. But by his normal natural proclivity in the morning, it means that he might be very good at sales. So if I know that somebody is good in a certain area and I can marry that with technical skill or help them develop a technical skill to put to best use what it is they're good at when they wake up in the morning, then I'm starting to maximize talent, and I'm also finding ways to do that for myself. Leadership development is getting people better at the art of getting people to follow them when things are challenging. We can all agree right now, dealing with COVID-19, that leadership development is tantamount. If we, and in the case of everybody on this call right now, we all tend to answer to ourselves, which means that our ability to keep us moving right now needs to be at a very high level. We need to constantly find ways to not motivate, because motivation is a management process, but inspire. In other words, to get ourselves to believe in what it is we're doing. The better we can get at getting people to march to the same beat or the same drum, to use a military analogy for a moment, to get people to follow us into the breach, if you will, the higher our level of developed competency and skill as leaders we have. But there are also things that we want to look at when it comes to first talent, and then understand the technical parts that go into leadership. So even if it is just serving ourselves, we can become better at moving our business forward and continuing to face challenges. When we have other people that report to us, or other people inside of organizations as they grow, leadership development becomes an actual tangible, and it becomes something that we need to technically assess and look at how we develop those skills as well as those talents inside of people. Strategic plan is the overall test measure for the business. It looks at where the business sits now, in some cases based on history, where it was coming from, and what our expectations are over the next 6 months, year, 2 years, and so on. Many businesses develop strategic plans that go many, many years and even decades into the future. From a personal perspective, I think that's a little excessive, as with the changing shape of our current marketplace, typically if you're looking at least 2 to 3 years ahead with a mind of capitalizing on advantages that are coming in your own industry and marketplace, then strategic plans should really, from a realistic test measure, or from a, I sit here now and where should I be in 2 years, allow me to give a measurement so that I can always be looking at what my business is doing compared to what my expectations were. And in turn, to be able to tell whether I'm directing my business in the way that's going to lead to its success and outcome, or whether I have to make adjustments or changes. Strategic plans can be incredibly complicated, or they can be quite simple. And in fact, my usual advocacy, because I tend to work with small to medium enterprise, is for really simple strategic plans. 1-page or 2-page documents that outlines revenue, cash expectations, expense benchmarks, facilities, staffing needs that we would have, any equipment or outside purchases that we would need to make as businesses develop and grow, so that we can look to address them proactively. In other words, as businesses build up towards something, we're looking to transact on those, as opposed to reactively when we find that we have a deficiency or an error. Strategic plans will hopefully, if they are done diligently enough and with enough foresight, allow us to make decisions in front of potential challenges or problems as opposed to the back end. Now, last but certainly not least, inside of our leadership component are brand development and brand channel extensions. Funny words for how the marketplace recognizes what we do and when they come back to us the very first time. Why this is a leadership component or quadrant as opposed to architecture boils down to impression as it is portrayed in the marketplace. If I may for a moment. In architecture, we have business development and marketing. And once upon a time, to explain the difference between sales and marketing and brand, I found this really colorful and a little bit of off-color cartoon, and I'm going to share it just by voice, not visually, for a moment. There are two people talking on a street, person one and person two, and they're having a great conversation, and person one says to person two, "I'm great in bed." That would be sales. Now, person one and person two finish their conversation, person two walks away. Person two walks away with a thought in their head that's really strange that person one would blurt that out loud, but you know, whatever. That's just the context of the conversation we had, and I can live with it. Person two walks away down the street and runs into their friend, person three. So now person two and person three are talking. And as they get more into their conversation, person two cannot let this conversation with person one go. And out of the blue, person two says to person three, they blurt out loud, "I hear person one is good in bed." That is marketing. That's what everybody talks about or they understand as value. Now, person three did not have that initial conversation. They think it's strange that person two would say this out loud. So they wander off down the street, and who should they run into but person one, the entire perpetrator of this whole chain of custody. They get to talking, and person three mentions out loud that they ran into person two. And then out of the blue, they say, "Person one, I understand that you are great in bed." Sales and marketing are technical developments, and they are processes that we need to run on a regular basis for our business to develop. Brand, which is that third one, where somebody comes back and tells us, right or wrong, that they understand that we have value or are good at something, is what brand development is. Knowing what it is we're good at and getting the marketplace to respond in kind and ultimately come back to us means that we have done a good enough job from a leadership perspective developing the brand of our business. In other words, the recognized value that maybe we have had no direct influence over. And that is so understanding brand development. Now, brand channel extensions means that once we understand something that has an immense amount of value and that a marketplace will start to respond or come back to us to ask us for that service, product, or commodity, allows us to leverage that. Brand channel extension, the best example, and I'll use my favorite company, Apple, for a moment to explain. In 2007, Apple rolled out the iPhone. And before that, the advent of the smartphone was really in its infancy. In fact, smartphones as we understand them now, with touch displays, interactive, lots of apps, games, social media content, video applications, our ability to transact our entire business world through a 5-inch screen that we carry around in our pocket did not exist before then. In fact, touch technology was still fairly new, even though touch technology's development goes back to the 70s and even the late 60s. Touch technology was still not a very big part of our world. So Apple, which was building, at the time, and I mean, the reputation for Apple computers is still very high. I'm talking to you right now through a MacBook. Apple went about building the very first smartphone, the iPhone. And when they launched it and unveiled it to the marketplace, they said, what would it be like if you had a computer in your pocket that allowed you to send messages and emails, to surf the internet, and to answer the phone? And the rest of the marketplace went, well, we have no idea what you're talking about, but because you do one thing really well, computers, you have to be doing this really well as well. So we're going to follow along. That is brand channel extension. Our ability to take what people understand our value is to the marketplace, to be able to leverage that and turn it over into a new potential offering. So all told, we have 4 quadrants, components, or cornerstones in our business: money, time, architecture, and leadership. And amongst these 4 areas, components, or quadrants of our business, We have a total of 19 parts. Once again, each of these parts can divide into more areas. It can provide for more diagnostic, but the end result for most businesses is that amongst 19 parts and 4 areas in our business, we can fairly simply or expediently identify what may be working, what may be working very, very well, or what might be challenged. And then that starts to give us the opportunity to identify where we should focus when it comes to our business. Now, these 4 components, when we look at this test measure, so that money, that time, that architecture, and this leadership, with each of their individual components in there, are really going to get measured by three different metrics. And I discussed them a little earlier on. The money and time is the top half of the page, and that's the profit side. So is the business profitable or not? Is it maximizing its returns? And is it doing what's in the best financial perspective for the business itself? The bottom half, the measurements, are people and process. In other words, do the people that we have, are they capable of doing a very good job? Can we get more out of them, or do they not fit? And ultimately, the processes, the way we do things in the business. Are they efficient enough? Are they adaptive enough? Or do we need to make changes? So these 4 components of the business, we need to be able to measure the entire business from 3 different lenses or 3 different optics: the profit, the people, and the process. And the top half, money and time, is the profit center. And the architecture and leadership, the bottom half of the page, is the people and process. So we have 4 components for businesses and business owners to look at with 19 parts. We have 3 measurement tools that we put to use: profit, people, and process. And then we have 2 components that senior leadership, management, and stakeholders in businesses need. That'd be to the left and the right of the page: the mentorship and proximity. Proximity is surrounding yourself continuously with other people that are on a similar mission to you. That could be inside or outside of your business. Those people that you can leverage, grow with. And then mentorship is finding those people that can help to teach you things that you do not know or cannot get yourself. For business owners, and once again, my primary marketplace is small to medium enterprise. For them to sit down for the very first time, chances are they have not thought about the business except from a more holistic approach. In other words, I get what the money component, and I know there are financial constraints, and I know I got to measure my cash flow, and I balance my checkbook if anybody even has one of those. And yeah, I know that time's always an issue, and I got to get a little better at selling, and I don't have time or resources for marketing, and hiring's always a pain in the rear, and leadership, strategic plan, I guess it'd be a good idea. And everybody says I'm really good at this, so I guess that'd be brand development or brand channel extensions. But for most people, they're looking at a business from a holistic standpoint. How do I feel? What do I physically touch right now? And not from a technical. The moment we can take business and quite simply outline it to them, and in fact, draw it on a blank piece of paper. Let's get you to divide up this page into 4 parts: money, time, architecture, and leadership. And ask you, so how do you feel? And more importantly, what's the actual structure of your business? So that's where, as business owners, are talking to everybody that's on this call for a moment, we have this little legend at the top. 1's perfect, 2's good, 3's average, 4 needs work, and 5's critical. If I go into the money component and I look at each one of these parts and I say, short-term budgeting, do I have a budget? Do I think it works? Do I stick to it? Is it really helpful? Can I give myself a score? If I can, we use our little legend at the top. 1's perfect and 5's critical, or 1's great and 5's terrible. What score would I want to give my business? I'm going to give it a 2, for example. Long-term financial planning. Am I looking at the financial structure of the business? And can I understand what's going to happen over the next 12 months and make some measured estimates on where my business is going to go, what it will cost to operate, and then what my revenue should be like, or what I'm going to be pursuing or chasing in goal setting? If I can, then do I have all the tools and the bits and pieces in place? And I want to give myself another score, 1 to 5. Cash flow projections. What is going on with the physical money? Do I have a really simple tool to test and measure? Am I looking at my cash flow on a regular basis? Am I monitoring and measuring it on a weekly? And what am I using from a tool base? How simply can I find this information? What is my score going to be? Profit and loss. Do I have the accounting bookkeeping cycle of my business in line? Do I have it working effectively? Is it easy, simple, and fast for me to have access to the financial data of my business? And KPIs. Dashboard. Do I have a financial dashboard? Does it work? Do I use it regularly? So these are questions that we would ask from an assessment test measure in each one of these components, so that we can get both subjectively a feel for how the business is doing, and objectively the actual structure of what's going on inside the business. So every one of these 5 components has a series of subjective, objective questions so we can come up with an actual score, which means that inside of money, we can do one of 2 things. One, we can average everything and actually plot that along a line so that we can say, to a great degree of certainty, the financial or the money component of your business is sitting at about a 3. Or we can take our best worst case scenarios. If I have a 1, for example, in short-term budgeting, and let's say my score was a 5 in KPIs, I could mark my 1 and mark my 5, and that would show the discrepancy or the spread in those areas of my business that I feel and structurally are very sound, or those areas that would need help or support. Now, as I go through each component, I would be giving myself a score. So I would move over to time and time management. Am I regularly and effectively managing my time? Am I focused, and do I know what the expectations are for myself and other people in my business, and other what their actual roles are, and are they doing the job very well? Time on my business is myself, any partners, senior leaders, or key stakeholders helping to plan, direct, and grow my business. Time for my business. Am I being really selective with how time is being eaten up by my business, or how I'm dedicating it inside of my business, or what the key stakeholders are doing? And are there both limits and expectations for measurement? So each one of these areas, I can now give myself a score, and once more, plot it along this line that sits up in the time component. As I go through architecture, once more, human capital. Do I have a human capital component? Do I have a proper system for onboarding, for finding, onboarding, retaining, and ultimately saying goodbye to employees? Do I have a way to care and feed for everybody that's responsible, or that I'm responsible for inside my business? Business development. Do I have a sales system? Do I have a sales methodology? Do I have the tools and processes in place for my business to do what it needs to do effectively? Marketing. Do I have a method? Is my business talking to the outside marketplace? What are the tools, partners, or resources that I'm putting to work, or am I handling it myself? Operations. Do I understand the steps that go on in my business, and can I very readily pass those on to other people? Team and management development. Am I aware, first of all, what I'm good at and not good at? Am I making plans or taking steps to build my technical skills to get better at my job? And if I have other people involved with my business, am I working on developing them? Inside of leadership, talent capabilities. What are people good at? How do we leverage them? How do we grow them? What are those? And what individual talents match for what kind of roles, jobs, or functions we have in the business? Leadership development. Am I good at getting people to follow along? How do I develop more of the ability to get people to trust and believe and follow me even in difficult times? Strategic planning. Am I looking to test and measure my entire business and build a footprint or a benchmark so that I can measure and keep myself on task or on direction as my business grows and develops, instead of allowing it to just haphazardly move? Then, of course, brand development, brand channel extensions. What is the expectation and result in my business? How do I grow that? How do I get more people involved and to understand the value that my business brings? And then as my business develops a very strong brand, do I have the capacity and ability to leverage that into other places? So each one of these 4 components, I can issue a score for myself or for another person. I can take that score, chart it out across a line. I can average it to give myself a visual representation, first of all, for the overall health of each component in my business. And then I can look at the individual areas that are most challenged, least challenged. So when I look in the money component, out of all 5 of these, the most common issue that occurs inside of businesses is cash flow. Financial structures are critical. Proper accounting and bookkeeping is important, particularly for financial and fiscal responsibility. And a dashboard for the overall health of the business is vital. But out of all 5 of these parts, your cash flow and being able to understand what's going on with your cash is number 1. This is a sacrosanct, a non-negotiable in business. Inside of time on our business. Having time to direct, plan, grow our business is critical. It is vital for the development of our business long term. And if yourself, as the leader of your own business and the manager, or other key stakeholders, if you have them involved in your business, having dedicated time and knowing what our expectations are for that is vital. And so having a sense of time on our business and what we're doing with it is once again a non-negotiable for functioning business. Inside of architecture and leadership, it is the business development and the marketing components. How we can prove this is typically in smaller businesses, you will see this symptom. As business develops and grows and a company gets busier and busier and busier, less and less attention is being spent on sales until you're so busy right now you don't even have time to return phone calls, answer emails, or respond correctly to inquiries coming from the outside marketplace. Soon that business, as all business is cyclical, starts to drop, slow down, and die off. As that happens, we start to develop a sense of scramble. This is dropping, it's going away. I think I can keep it moving a little bit longer, but I need to do something. Sales and marketing are cornerstone functions in a business. If we have well-developed sales and marketing programs, we can continue to develop, maintain, and sustain business indefinitely. They are non-negotiables. If a business does not have an appropriate sales cycle or marketing cycle, in other words, the way to attract, first of all, retain its current clients and customers, but also attract new clients and customers, inevitably it will die. And inside the leadership component, the non-negotiable is a strategic plan, a benchmark and test measure for the whole business. So out of these 4 components, we have 5 things that must always be in place. And for businesses that sustain themselves and continue to flourish long-term, these 5 tend to be strengths or at least well-developed. And that is our cash flow, our time on our business development, our marketing, and our strategic plan. This does not mean the other areas are not critically important or that based on symptoms and time, they do not need to be fixed first. But typically when you will see businesses that have a challenge in at least one of these 5 areas, it is an area that must always be worked on. And if it's a challenge in your own business, then this is the business coach suggesting this is an area you should begin to tackle. When I sit down and test measure with business owners, the conversation we're having today, and if you happen to be doing it for your own business, any one of these 5 components out of the 19, if you've scored a 3 or higher, then that means that must be addressed sooner rather than later. It means by optics, subjective, and technical structure in the business that you are missing something vital that can hurt your business long term. If you find that 2 or more of these 5 components has a 3 or higher, it means that you have gone from symptomatic to chronic. And when a business starts to go chronically diseased in some of these components, then it is a threat. The business is starting to harm itself, and perhaps irrevocably. If all 5 of these components are scoring a 3 or higher, it means that the business has severe structural issues and needs to be reworked in a hurry. So as you move forward into the world, for everybody that's on this call, but as well for those on this call right now, should you find, if you've been scoring your own business moving along, if you have a 3 in any of these components, this needs to be the very first place that you attach yourself to and look at it. If you have a 3 in at least 2 or more, then this must be something that you do as expediently or as quickly as possible. Any other component that scores a 3 or higher is something that needs to become part of the symptom list, and long-term you need to be looking at development depending on what your business is trying to do. If your business is expanding aggressively because its sales and marketing are working really well, and you're looking to expand your people capital, your human capital into the business, and you find that you do not have a human resources component for your business, please repeat the 5 again. Sorry, I missed one. Absolutely, Ashley. I'll back up for you for a moment. So out of money, time, architecture, and leadership, the 5 critical components we have are cash flow projections, time on your business development and marketing, and then strategic planning. Does that make sense? Okay, perfect. Thank you. So out of these 5, once more, if we have a score that is a 3 or higher, those become threats to the business. Now, depending on where our business is developing as it's growing given enough time, that means that we may be situationally looking at a part of the business that requires attention now. If a business is aggressively upsizing, changing, or downsizing when it comes to its human capital, and you do not have a well-developed human resources program inside of your business, naturally it means that you're going to have to develop one in a hurry. You're going to need the operational technical understanding. You're going to need the legislative background as well. And then you need the actual process and the ability to work with people. In turn, if a business is rapidly aggressing or downsizing, another area that you would see often would be suffering from a lower score would be operations planning. In other words, the actual way that a business runs. As businesses expand aggressively, our ability to understand how we're going to create new roles, new jobs, where people fit in and what their jobs are going to be, and then what ways we're going to get them to work, in other words, their processes, or what the actual tools, in other words, what they're going to need to be able to accomplish and fulfill their jobs, become very important. So every one of these is critical given time as businesses develop and grow to have all 19 of these parts work properly in a business. But these 5, our cash flow, our time on, our business development, our marketing, and our strategic plan are the 5 that make businesses bulletproof. If I have a test measure for my business from a strategic plan, if I'm always getting my business to talk for itself in the form of marketing, if I have a sales process that allows me to continue to develop new relationships, new connections, and to foster the ones that I have, if I'm willing to plan, direct, and grow, in other words, spend time to focus on where my business is at in the form of time on my business and direct that traffic, and then measure for my cash flow first, I'm going to be doing the the highest order of good for the actual operation of my business. From there, overall, if I look at measuring from the profit base of my business, is it doing well? Yes, no, or do I need to make decisions? Are the people that are being responsible or being attached to my business or I'm investing responsibility for, are they capable of doing a good job? If not, how do I help them? And are the ways that I do them, the process, working well? If not, how do I adapt them and grow them? And lastly, as business owners, that I'm willing to invest in mentorship. In other words, learn from people that can teach me to do things I don't know how to do. And I'm willing to invest time and energy in developing my proximity circle. In other words, finding other people on similar missions, and they can be, again, both in or out of your business. Then as business owners, large or little, we can assess, test, measure where our business is at. We can look at it visually, and we can create our own draft plan, where our business sits now, what components we need to work on next. We can give ourselves a measurement, and of course, we can tell us what course of action we're going to take. This, in turn, allows us to become more successful business owners. Why is that important? Why is it important to be able to take things and simplify them? Business is a technical skill. Highly successful business owners do not wake up one day and measure a great deal of success. They learn through an awful lot of heartache, sacrifice, and even failure. And in fact, many business owners fail multiple times before they really achieve success. If we can take a business and break it down into a certain series of more readily understandable steps, we can more easily understand from a component basis what works, what doesn't, and then decide on what is critical or most important to focus on or work on next. Then we are developing technically as business owners and starting to give ourselves a fighting chance at achieving more success. Why is it so important to simplify what we're doing to the best of our ability so that we can more readily identify and then start to work from it? 87% of businesses fail in the first 3 years. That is usually due to, and forgive the term here, more balls than brains. In other words, I start doing something that I am good at, but have not necessarily developed the technical skill of running a business, and I usually run out of gas, run out of steam. In other words, I run out of resources or run into challenges or problems that I couldn't anticipate well enough ahead of time. By year 5 to 7 in a business's development curve, the average failure rate drops to about 64%. In other words, we're starting to get somewhere. Usually as we get to that period in time, that means that we are most of the time suffering from a lack of structure. The actual infrastructure of the business and the parts and components that make up a business have not been addressed readily enough, and businesses collapse like a building without a proper framework to hold up the roof. At year 10, this is where things actually start to get scary. We fail 97% of the time globally. 97% of all businesses fail in 10 years. Why that tends to happen is, first of all, as human beings, as a species, we're really not all that good at sticking to anything for a great deal of time, but we also get tired. We tend to wear out. Any of these 3 issues boils down to fundamentally first understanding what our business does, having the ability to make it work appropriately, and lastly, making it as simplified as possible so that it is much, much easier to run and manage. Whether we stay as one human being or whether we have hundreds or thousands of human beings responsible to us or answering for us, the more simplistic we can take a business, the more readily we can remove the complexity in business, which more often than not is human capital. In fact, human capital can be one of the biggest complexities in business. So the better we are, or more adept we are at taking away the human capital complexity and simplifying our operations, the way we measure our business, the more likely we are to succeed. So for everybody on this call today, and this includes myself, we need to be able to look at our business simply. We need to be able to understand it elegantly. In other words, we want it to work and work very well. And then we want it to be repeatable. In other words, once I learn to do something, I can pass that on to other people. And so we take our business and we look at it from a money, a time, an architecture, and a leadership, or money in, money out, the way we spend our time, the things and stuff that make our business run, or how we plan, direct, grow our business. We learn to measure it from profit, people, and process, and then to make life better for ourselves and to make it more simple to continue to manage, direct, and grow our businesses. We build through proximity more people around us that are going to go on the same mission as us, and then ultimately find mentorship to teach us how to do things that we do not know how to do. This is what I do on a day-to-day basis with business owners, and this is how I work with people. At this time, do we have questions or comments?
Yeah, Mitch, if I may, can you hear me okay?
Yep, absolutely.
So this is Ashley, and I'm wondering, and I know we've got maybe people even on this call, but I'm a business of one, as you know, some people on our team are. And I think a lot of this, I mean, I have embarrassing scores, let's be honest, but being that I just started, I'm giving myself a grace period. How would you or would you adapt this for a business of one that will probably be a business of one for, call it 12 to 18 months? Are there any areas that you would kind of spend a little bit more time on versus none, or all the key 5 areas you spoke about would still be as crucial for that side of business?
Great question. Now, regardless of size of business, to answer Ashley, the big 5 are always a need. Why would a strategic plan for an army of one be very, very important? It's always good to establish a set of expectations ahead of time, even if it has to adapt. Now, understand, strategic plans are organic documents. They are not rigid. And when we have a brand new business, it is better to have a sense of expectation and then to allow that to adapt. So that's where a test measure from a strategic plan would come in. Business development and marketing, especially in an army of one, are going to be critical. The quicker you can get your business to talk about itself, in other words, develop a marketing program and a marketing system, creating content, getting a partner perhaps when you can afford it, like, you know, hiring Ali, for example, or bringing in SOS marketing, like we're looking at our local marketplace, other companies as well. The faster you can get to that point, or you can develop your own methodology, means that you can get your business to talk about itself, which actually means you have to do less heavy lifting when you're in sales. Developing your sales technical skill and making it more efficiently for you as a small business owner is really the lifeblood. The more you're on the look and the hunt, the more you're able to replace, because inevitably and eventually clients leave. And if we're looking at those components, so sales, marketing, strategic plan, that is essentially the amount of time we're going to be working on our business. So that time on component becomes critical, because if we are always our chief cook and bottle washer, in other words, we are always our frontline employee to do all the service, our time is actually going to be very, very limited. So even having a sense of, on a weekly or bi-weekly basis, where I'm going to stop, look at where I'm at, figure out what steps I need to take next, and then go back to the mechanics of running my business every day becomes more critical. And lastly, as a solopreneur, measuring cash flow is always going to come number one. How much money do I have? How much do I expect to come in this week? What are going to be my expenses, which includes paying myself? And how much am I going to have left over compared to how far that money is going to go? So these 5 are going to be critical still, even when you're an army of one, even if you're just a solopreneur, and even if it's for 12 to 18 months or 12 to 18 years. Now, other components of the business start to become less important. Our profit and loss and bookkeeping cycle is a requirement for us to first maintain the financial health, the fiduciary responsibilities in our business, And of course, it's important when we come to taxation. Having a short-term budget or long-term financial plan may or may not necessarily be in the cards, because if you are measuring and test measuring your cash flow on a regular basis, here's a funny thing about your financials. The more I watch my profit loss, or my revenue versus my expenses, and how much my net profit or my net revenue is in my business, that does not necessarily equate to cash. But the higher my physical cash reserves become, the better the financial position of my business is. So where you cannot use net profit necessarily to feed your family, you can certainly use more cash in the bank to do that. So I would always suggest first you start with cash flow management, and you'll make sure that your accounting, bookkeeping cycle are in a really good spot. When it comes to time component, if we're looking at those areas, time on your business usually is going to be the most limited, but that's critically important to know that when you do get an opportunity, you have to be very specific about what you should be working on to further your business. Then when it comes to time in your business, you need to start getting far better at assessing where clients, client style, type, the amount of work you're doing for them, really being specific on what's going to turn the highest return. Because there's only a limited amount of you to go around and a limited amount of time. So being specific on what outcomes are and being able to measure your performance is going to be vital when it comes to time in. So time in and on kind of live there. Now for business owners, solopreneurs, time 4 is a weird one. That becomes call it your bookends, if you will. Where I said early on that all time for my business typically runs from 7 to 7. I tend not to deviate from that because I need time to myself. I need time with my family. I need time with my children. I need time for socialization. I need time for my own passions and pursuits. I need time to eat. I need time to sleep. I need time to do any number of other things. So when I establish a hard and fast rule, and again, that's allowed to flex because little businesses tend to be far more flexible than anything else, then we add a structure to our business, and therefore we can hold ourselves accountable to that sense of time. And that means that we will in turn generally incur a much higher productivity, because if we're telling ourselves, I only have 2 hours to accomplish this, or 4 hours, or inside of this day, even though I have 8 client meetings, I only have 9 hours and I've got a few other business functions I have to perform. So I better be very timely with how my time is being used. And then we come down to architecture. More than anything else, if we are really good with our business development and marketing, of course, and lastly, strategic planning. So there are components there where I would say you can shelve them, you can park them, if you will. But those 5, regardless of size of business, are ones that you don't want to allow to get away from you at all, as they are the ones that most likely will punish you and are almost always the cause of business failure. Usually without fail, people go, we failed because of this, we failed because of that, or we failed. Now, I'm going to use a really stark example we're sitting at right now. It's estimated that 25 or 30% of businesses in our marketplace right now are going to fail and collapse because of what's happened with COVID-19. One of the biggest reasons they're going to fail, everybody's going to go, hey, everything's shut down and nobody can do business, and they collapsed. One of the first reasons they're going to collapse is simply because people ran out of money. When people run out of money, you cannot maintain a business. You cannot continue to pay the bills or pay its insurance or the roof over its head or whatever else. So that is a direct failure. Call it, now, we could not have planned strategically for COVID-19. Of course not. Only the most Machiavellian of business strategists would be able to accurately predict something like this coming. But we can always be in a spot where, from a cash flow basis, we've got a great deal more lead time because of the way we're preserving our capital. And then from strategic planning, where we're understanding where certain lulls, dips in our business are, it allows us to adapt and move where those are to tell us how much extra time we've got compared to how much we have to do. And then using an example like the situation we currently sit in, that also tells us that while nobody's buying at the moment, does that mean we should stop continuing to communicate with people that could potentially do business with us? And should we stop or desist from doing any marketing? No, this is usually a time of advocacy where we would want to really accelerate how much we're getting our business to talk in the marketplace. Why? Because everybody's stuck. Nobody has anywhere else to go. So our ability to capture them in a spot where they might actually pay attention starts to increase as well. Other thoughts and comments? So for today, as a takeaway, please, I implore you, if you've not been scoring your business up until now, print out a copy, use a digital, or write it out. When you're done and you've had a good look at your own business, I hope that you will have found some of the direction, course of action that you would want to use for your own business moving forward to direct, plan, grow what it is you're going to do. And if you have questions or comments, that's where you reach out to me. I'm happy to answer any of these at any point in time. If you're looking for advice, suggestions, methodologies, tools, tips, tricks, whatever it's going to take for your business to take a step forward, please do not hesitate to reach me. And should you find that you want to make a consideration for a more formal relationship, because as all of you know, we've got another organization that we're working with right now too. Stacy, absolutely. If you signed up digitally, your digital ticket, actually, if you click on it, will go through to Eventbrite. If not, I can make sure to send you a copy of this after. In fact, what I will do is while we are talking, I will drop the link so that you can download it directly from inside the chat. So here we go. For those that want a copy, right inside the chat here, you'll be able to click on that and you'll be able to download the PDF directly. Should you want advice, comments, suggestions, or you want help with your business at all, please do not hesitate to reach out to me. I am here to help you in any form or fashion that I can. And of course, part of our goal inside of Cyndicate and my goal as a business coach is to see everybody succeed. But I always start from this foundation, which is where are we, what's going on with your business, and what do we need to focus on yet or next. And if you always start there, and as you move forward in the world, you continue to carry this conversation to other people, and as well as continue to come back and test measure for yourself, you're going to find that business is going to succeed quite a bit faster, simply because you are much better at identifying much more quickly where challenges arise in your business. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining me today. It is Friday afternoon at 3:03 p.m. Questions or comments, please do not hesitate to reach out to me. Otherwise, enjoy your weekend. Let me know if there's anything I can do. And I hope you have a fantastic weekend.
Thanks very much, Mitch. Have a great day.
You too. Okay. Bye-bye.